Hello there. All right, so in this video, we're going to dive in a little bit more into some recent changes in the Autopatch um, August 19th update. Um, we're super excited about this update, mainly because of a lot of the enhancements we've made on the back end, primarily around authentication and working towards a leaner footprint. I know I've done a couple of videos where we've done tenant onboarding in the past, but this is where some of these changes have taken place. So I wanted to share some of them with you and go over here to tenant administration and enrollment. We go through our EULA, same as it was before, but something you're going to notice here when we go into our ART readiness checks, you'll notice that our readiness checks have dropped dramatically. We now only have like 3 core items with always that advisory if you're running co-management with SCCM integration. We're validating your licenses legit. Interesting thing is right now, if you don't have a license, you won't even see the setup. And then you also have unlicensed admin, which is on by default for most tenants. Newer tenants may be still off if you have an existing tenant that was pre SCCM integration days. And then also making sure that you have no update rings assigned to all devices that might get in the way of the auto patch rings that'll get deployed as part of this. This is a test tenant, so everything here automatically lights up right out of the box. But because we are able to remove things like conditional access checks, service account checks, security default checks for MFA, all of those were able to be removed because of a recent addition of our first party app in replace of existing password-based service accounts. So because of that, makes the whole enrollment much more efficient. Because we know we meet our prerequisites, we have a ready flag, we can go ahead and click enroll. This is going to kick off the enrollment process and just take us a minute. I think if you've watched any videos on Autopatch enrollment, this is going to look very similar. You hit OK. We get some admin contacts from you. So we're going to need a phone number, and we'll just do 555. We put a 1 in there. 8675309. We'll just do test@test.com, and we'll call this Mr. Cantoso. Right now, the art has, or the enrollment has us for adding a primary and a secondary admin. So we'll go ahead and just add another admin on there. 8675308, because the numbers can't be the same, and we'll do test1@test.com. And we'll do this one, Mrs. Cantoso. There we go. Let's go through and complete. Now this setup process, we have 2 phases in the setup process. We have the pre-setup, which is configuring the first party application, couple of the core service account, or not service accounts, core policies. So these are the configurations in Intune, the groups necessary to run the service. Then there is the second phase, which is setting up the backend synchronization services, the backend management services that gives Autopatch the ability to gather that data and then monitor and manage those policies going forward. So you'll see here we finished the first phase. We can go ahead and click continue, and that drops us right into our devices blade here. That whole process was dramatically increased or sped up because of the great work of the Autopatch engineering team, and then also with reducing a lot of those readiness checks as well. With that, we also have the configuration of the environment going on in the background. And because of the new additions, this has been dramatically sped up as well. Before we dive into anything more, what I wanted to do is let's look at some of these new changes now. And let me flip over to Azure Active Directory. Now, for those of you who are used to seeing Autopatch deploy in the past, you saw that, we deployed a number of service accounts. You had like MSadmin int, and MS test. You'll notice with new deployments, those are no longer being deployed. We've also dramatically cut back the number of groups necessary. Now, there's still more than we'd probably like to see in here, but they've been dramatically cut back because of the no longer needing the extra accounts in there. So we've cut them back from quite dramatically to only the necessary accounts that we need for the service. The big thing that we want to see is now that because we're not using service accounts anymore, what is this new first-party application? So let's go into Azure Active Directory Enterprise Applications, and we can just start with Modern. And what you'll see here is that there is a new application that is created called Modern Workplace Management. This is the new enterprise app that was actually deployed starting back in July. So this actually was introduced July 9th before the service went global availability or general availability on August 12th, I believe it was. Because we went GA, or I should say July 11th when we went GA. Because we introduced this, we weren't quite sure about all the permissions on the back end. So as a service, we left MSadmin, and MS test in place, even though they were kind of stale accounts. They weren't being used at all. They were still there. One of the cool changes about this weekend was because we made the hard shift over to the first party app, we were able to get rid of all those accounts, all the associated groups, and all the architecture, really the prereq checks that needed to go along with it around conditional access and MFA. Cool thing about this application is it deploys as a first-party app. It runs outside of conditional access because it is native to Azure and Intune, and so that way it can operate like other native Microsoft services. Couple things to take a look at is permissions. The permissions that have been set up for the first-party app, we took an approach of minimum access necessary to run the service and nothing more. So we really looked at like what can we do with the minimum rights that we can do to make sure that we aren't giving ourselves access to anything more than we need. So you'll see things here like group create. We now have the ability to create groups in Azure Active Directory, but you notice we only give ourselves create. We don't have the ability to remove. Now we do have the ability to remove groups that we create, but not any groups that weren't created by the service. We grant ourselves the ability to review all Windows Update policies, and a lot of this is because we need to manage our own, but also making sure that existing policies do not conflict with the new policies. Now this does, as a general principle, we do not delete anything existing in customers' environments and tenants. We only manage what is ours and then report on anything that might be conflicting with that. Directory read all, what that means is it gives us the ability to understand the users and understand the users that are interacting with the service, so we can report that back, as well as service configurations and device management configurations, as well as policies read all, so we understand what the policies are running in the tenant and make sure that they're not conflicting with the policies deployed, again, in a report only kind of spirit, as well as configurations, privileged operations, and then just read write on RBAC, just so we understand the service has the ability to operate at that level. So with that, I mean, we dramatically reduced the scope that the Autopatch service runs inside your tenant. The cool thing about this is as this runs longer, if you ever want to audit or understand what's going on with the service, you can always go over to the audit log and see what actions the first-party app has taken inside your environment. And so this will give you all the actions performed by that account. And you'll notice that these all just ran because we just deployed this within the last couple of minutes. So nothing you need to do with this. Really, you never have to look at it. It is using a certificate-based authentication rather than shared secret. That is regenerated and renewed periodically, but is solely maintained by the Autopatch service. So that's one of our biggest enhancements that we're really, really happy about. And we're really looking forward to how the service opens up for a lot more customers, because we know that that's been a concern in the past. So let's jump back over. Let's see how our setup is doing. So look at this. It took about a minute, and our backend process finished configuring. So just like that, we are able to onboard onto Autopatch start to finish in as little as like 6 pages, and really as little as probably in the ballpark around 4 to 5 minutes, without all the explanation that I was giving on enterprise apps. Now that we're in here, let's go ahead and add some devices. For those of you who haven't used the service, or this may be your first time getting an understanding, the way Autopatch is built is it's made to work just out of the box, but we don't automatically just ingest devices that exist inside Intune or Azure Active Directory. What we've done is provided a method or a security group where you can add the devices that you want automatically enrolled into the service. So in this case, I have 2 devices that I've added to this demo tenant, and we're going to go ahead and add them here. We'll go ahead and hit select. We'll give this a minute for them to show up in our security group. And then what we can go over and do a refresh to automatically synchronize those in. So we see those are automatically in our group here. We'll go back to tenant administration. We'll see that our service is onboarded here. So let's go to devices and we'll go to Windows Autopatch right up here. Now with Windows Autopatch, I can go select Discover Devices, and then give this a few minutes. And what this is going to do is sync the devices that exist in that device, Windows Autopatch device registration group, Azure AD group. We're going to give that a minute to kick in, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these other checkboxes. We've added more recently release management in here. Release management is going to show you the schedule for your quality updates and feature updates, and then really the status on how they're working between those rings. And I'll do we can do a video on that a little bit more. These get populated as soon as devices are enrolled and policies are targeted. You'll start seeing this populate in the background. We can also go over to tenant administration, and we see in here we have Windows Autopatch under tenant administration. Here you have message center. So these are general service messages that will be presented to the admins. Also your admin contacts would get notification about what's going on. We also have a service health dashboard. Since Autopatch is a managed service, we are constantly monitoring the performance of your environment in regards to patching. And if we notice that maybe during the period of release for Patch Tuesday, your tenant doesn't meet the minimum bar for which Autopatch deems as healthy, is we're always shooting for 95% after 21 days, we may generate a service incident on your behalf. You'll be able to see that under Service Health Dashboard, and then our engineers will be working that internally to understand why your environment might not be at 95% and what needs to be done to rectify that. So those are going to fall under messages. You also have admin contacts. So remember, Mr. and Mrs. Contoso that we created during our onboarding are automatically added in here. And this information is used for general communications, important updates, for customers that may have already onboarded onto the service pre-enterprise app. We do have a method coming out in the next couple of weeks that will provide the ability to migrate to enterprise app from service principal, and the people on the admin contacts will be part of those notifications, so they will be able to read about it there. As well as your ability to enter a support request that goes to our dedicated support engineering staff or service engineering staff that we have internally for Autopatch as well. So that's all under tenant administration support requests. So let's jump back over to devices under Windows Autopatch. And now what we can do is see that we have some devices added in here. Now that didn't take too long. For those of you curious, you can hit Discover, and that will automatically kick off a query of the Autopatch device registration group automatically. But you can also just let it wait, and it syncs about every hour. It'll check that group and add or onboard additional devices. Now you'll notice up here we have ready and not ready. Really what ready means is the device meets the prerequisites for Windows Autopatch, and it's ready to be managed for the next quality update cycle that is about to come. And I shouldn't say just quality updates, feature updates as well as Office. But you'll also notice that there's a Not Ready tab. This Not Ready tab will be display any devices that you incorporated into the device registration group, but do not meet one of our prereqs that we have in order to operate in the service. Let's say it hasn't been onboarded in a long time, or maybe it's an Azure AD object, but it doesn't exist in Intune, so it's not Intune enrolled. They'll show up in here with an explanation of why they don't meet those prereqs, so you can work that and get them into a ready state. Now, this is regularly re-evaluated, so if you do rectify one of those devices, let's say it's not enrolled into Intune, you enroll it into Intune, just give it a little bit of time, it'll automatically sync over and show up in here. Now, a couple things for just housekeeping. You'll notice that when we talk about groups, this means our rings, and these were both assigned to the first ring. And we know that in Windows Autopatch, we have test, first, fast, and broad. So first is one of the first groups that we automatically assign devices to, but in this case, we know that desktop TP, what is that, INP41 is an executive, so let's change that. I don't want that in the first group. I want to change that one to be in our broad group. So they're one of the last ones to get an update inside of our environment. We'll hit refresh here a couple times. It'll just take a minute before that updates, but we're going to leave the UF3MC1 in first because they're going to get the updates nearly right away. Actually, let's go crazy and let's go assign that to our test ring because they're going to get it first thing Patch Tuesday. Then we'll give that a couple minutes, let those update, and then they'll automatically kick off in the background. So what you'll notice here, so if we flip over back under release management, now that we have some devices in here and those policies that kicked off, we can now see our schedules have updated for August. Now we know it's August 21st, so we're really right at the end of our patching schedule for August, but these devices are going to be incorporated, and if the devices in test, they were made available on August 9th, and they should be done by August 16th, no later than. So we know that that device is going to immediately, next time it checks in, get its updates and apply and report in. Where the broad device still has until 8/25 to finish up that whole process. So it's going to get those updates advertised to it right away, but may not be enforced reboot until the 25th, which, I mean, works out just fine. So that way, if something is wrong with that first device test, we'll be able to find it there before we move on. You'll also notice up here you have pause and resume. So let's say I find a problem with our test. I can go into broad, I can hit pause, and I can go in like, let's pause our Windows quality update, update problem, and we're just gonna go, this is a problem. And we're gonna just do an absolute pause of our quality updates. Now what that does is pauses them across the board. Now, let's say I want to go back and resume. I have the ability to go in here. Let's go and resume our quality updates. Update issue resolved. And then I want to resume everything but broad because I think, at this point, I'm not sure how that's going to go. So let's update everything. And that kicks off all the rings but broad. I can also go back in here, do a resume quality update, update issue, do all the way down to broad, do OK. And what that'll do is that'll open up broad as well, and then those devices are going to start receiving those updates once again. So pause and resume right in the console, very easy to do with schedules. So you have this great view of what's going on with your environment. A couple other things that I'd love to show you is like reporting, which is available. These are populated right away, but you're not going to see a whole lot of data, mostly because my devices were just enrolled. I just enrolled into the service, so you're not going to see anything about like the status here until I have a couple days. So we'll do another overview of just reporting in general. But you'll see here that we report on healthy devices, not up-to-date devices, and ineligible devices, and then we populate those so you have a better understanding. We also provide a series of reports to help you understand what's going on in your environment and if there's any action that you do need to take or any action that Microsoft needs to take. I hope you enjoyed just this brief overview of Windows Autopatch. I tried to keep it a little bit shorter, and I hope that you find this useful enough to enroll within your environment. We have some very exciting stuff coming out this fall for Windows Autopatch, including a lot more granular customization, greater control over expedite, and feature updates as well that we're going to be super excited to talk about as soon as they're ready. Please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, post notes within LinkedIn or Twitter, or keep coming back to my blog periodically for additional updates. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.